Now let's move on to month generation. I'm going to provide to the component a month and a year, and then our component will generate the month based on that. So let's start by giving this a default. Let me just close this up over here. And we are going to need two variables. I'm going to call this one month, and I'm going to call this one year. The entirety of how our component behaves will be based on the values of these two variables. So the month will be a number from 1 to 12, 1 being January, 12 being December. Year will be a 4-digit year. Now I need a default here. I need to set this up to default to something, and I'm going to have it default to the system, month, and year. So let's add a start trigger. Add trigger, start, and I'm going to assign to each of these the current month and year of the system time. So whatever the system date happens to be, I'm going to use the month and year of that system date. And I'm going to be using some of ProtoPie's built-in month and date formulas. So if I go here to ProtoPie's website, and we go to resources, documentation, let's go to formulas, functions, and time and date. Notice how we have this function here, date now. This will return the current system date. And then what I can do is I can use one of these functions down here, year and month. So this is going to give us the year of the system date. So if I can put date now inside this year function, this will give me the year. And if I put date now inside this one here, month, then that's going to give us the month. So let's see this in action. Assign. I'm going to choose the month variable, and I'm going to use a simple formula here. I want the month function followed by the date now function. Let's duplicate this. I'm going to say this one will be for year, and instead of the month function, I'm going to use the year function. Okay, and let's name these. Assign month and assign year. Now, it may not be obvious to somebody else looking at your component what you've done here. So a handy trick that I like to do here is I'd like to add in a little bit of documentation. So right in between, right above this month assign right here, I'm going to add, and you can use any response for this. I like to use the focus one because the icon here looks the most to me like a note. I'm going to choose this one. Important, leave it unconfigured over here. And in doing so, it's going to show up orange. ProtoPie is going to treat this like there's an error, like there's a problem you need to fix, and it helps it stand out. And then what I can do is I can just rename this to say what's going on here. So I'm going to say default to system, month, and year. And a neat thing that I can do here too is I can even use emoji. Let's say I want to bring up my emoji viewer here. Let's search for something that looks like note, or I don't know, the speech bubble. That's a good one. Yeah, let's use that. So let's go here, and I'm going to put right at the front here. Let's use this one. There we go. Now this can be our universal symbol for this is a note, a little bit of documentation to help someone else who's looking at this understand what's going on. Now that I have my month and year, I want to use that. I want to use that to generate my month. Now, I could put all of that interaction in the start trigger here, but I'm going to be reusing this a number of different places. Every time I press the left and right arrow, for example, that's going to generate a new month. When I bring up the quick selection UI and I change the year and month, that's going to generate a new month. Whenever you have something that you want to reuse over and over again, I like to use what I call a subroutine for that. And I do that by making creative use of send and receive. So I'm going to add a trigger here, receive, and I'm going to say receive from current component. This is important because I want this message to be private within the component only. Receive from current component. And this message is going to be generate month. And as always, let's name our triggers. And then whenever I have a receive, where there's a message being sent to itself, I like to label it with from self. And similarly, I'm going to send that message here. So send to current component, and it should show up in the list here, generate month. and this will be send generate month to self. This is how I know that this is a private message within my component. You'll also notice that I often use uppercase letters for messages. I only use uppercase letters when the message is going outside of where I happen to be. So if I'm sending outside the component or the message is coming from outside into the component, I'll use uppercase. When the message is private within the component, I'll use this lowercase. We've got a bunch of things happening here, and we've added some documentation to say what this month and year are doing. I'd like to add some in between now here and here. So let's take this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say generate month. Right, so that way it kind of separates out that there's two things going on in here. The first thing I'm doing is I'm defaulting to the system month and year, and now I'm generating the month. Now you can make this as verbose as you need, but just understand that you only have so much room here to put stuff. You can do multiple lines, but I'll leave it up to you how much documentation you want to put in there. You want to make sure you have enough that anyone else looking at this is going to understand what's going on. This receive needs to do a few things. We need to update this display here. So right here it says January 2024. We need to update it with whatever the month and year are, and we want it formatted like this. So it's the full month name and the 4-digit year. We need to figure out the start day of the week. So we need to figure out if it starts on a Sunday, on a Tuesday, on a Friday, etc. We need to figure out the number of days for the given month. Now, for most of the months, this is pretty easy. We know that January has 31, March has 31, etc. February is going to be the only weird one that we're going to need to deal with, and we're going to need to determine if the year is a leap year. So it either has 28 or 29. And then lastly, we are going to send a message to all of our components so that way they can hide or show themselves as necessary and relabel themselves so that way we see the numbers in order. So let's add a bit more of this documentation, and let's make a list of all the things we need to do. This is useful for yourself as well, not just for someone else who's going to be looking at this. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and what did I say the first thing was? Update month and year display. And then the next one, so let's duplicate this. The next thing is determine start day of week. And let's duplicate this, determine number of days. And the last one will be message calendar day components. This is a good way of setting yourself up. This allows you to organize your thinking, and it kind of creates a checklist for all the things that you need to do in order to do whatever task it is that you want to do here. And in this case, my generate month routine, it needs to do these 4 things. So the first one is easy. I want to update this display with the full name of the month, followed by a space, followed by these 4 digits. Now, our Figma file already gives us a clue to what we need to do here. This is a formatting pattern. If we go back to our formulas and functions here, you're going to see we've got this function here called format date. And format date takes in a date, and then we'll format it based on the pattern that you give it here. Now, this one doesn't really tell you where to find all of the different options you have for the pattern. But if you scroll up to format time, it does. This function accepts a time value and conforms to the provided format pattern. If you click on this, this is going to take you to a list of a number of predefined tokens that you can use for formatting. So you're going to see here, if I use the token capital M, capital M, capital M, capital M, that's going to give me the full name of the month. If I wanted just the short name, I would use 3 capital M's instead of 4. If I wanted just the number, I would use 1 M or 2, depending if I wanted that leading 0. And if I wanted a 2-digit year, I would use 2 capital Y's. And if I want the 4-digit year, I would use 4 capital Y's. So we're going to use this. We're going to use this to make this formatting really easy. Let's go back over here to ProtoPie, and I'm going to add a text response under here, text. And this is going to be, notice how I don't have any here yet, so let's make this editable. And if we take a look at our layer list over here, we've got selected month container, and I'm going to pick this one here, selected month. Turn this into editable text. And now when I take a look at this text here, selected month, I'm going to use a formula. And I need to create a date out of the month and the year. If we take a look at our options here, if we go to format date, where is it? Right here. It's showing me that I need to provide the date in this 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day format. This is what we're going to be referring to as the standard date format, and we're going to be using this in a number of places. But what this doesn't tell you is you can also use this date function right here, date, year, number, month. And notice how this will give you the output of the year in that standard year, month, day format. So we're going to use this, and I'm going to use the year and the month from our variables, year and month. This item is not going to matter because all we care about is the year and the month, so we're just going to use one. We're just going to use first day of the month for this. So we're going to use the format date function, and for our first parameter, we are going to use that date function right here. We're going to fill in our year variable, our month variable, and explicitly the number 1. So let's do that. I'm going to use format date, and then I'm going to use the date function, which has 3 parameters, the year, so we have a year variable already. We have a month variable already, and like I say, the day of the month doesn't matter here, so I'm just going to use 1. And the second parameter of the format date is the formatting pattern that I want to use. Remember, I want that for capital M's, which will give me the full name of the month. So MMMM. I want a space in between, so space, and the 4-digit year. Y. This pattern is always in quotes. Say OK to that. And let's rename this. Let's preview this. And there we go. Now we're seeing February 2024. That's the month and year that it currently is on my system, and depending on when you are following this tutorial, you're going to see whatever month and year it happens to be on yours. Okay, that's our first step. Now we need to figure out the start day of the week. If you recall correctly, that is going to be a number from 0 to 6, 0 for Sunday, 6 for Saturday, and we're going to make creative use of the format date function once again. So let's go back over to our formatting tokens here. If I use a small d, this is now going to give us the day of the week with Sunday as 0. And notice how it's going to give us 0 to 6, exactly what we've been expecting. I want the first day of the month. So we're actually going to use almost the same formula as we have here because I want the first day of whatever my year and month happens to be. So we're going to be using this for our date. And the only thing that's going to differ is going to be our formatting pattern. And I want to save this. So I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to call this start day. And let's use a formula right here. So I'm going to use an assign. This will be on start day. And let's copy this formula because it's going to be almost identical. Copy this, say OK to that. Assign. Formula, I'm going to paste it here. The only thing I'm going to change is my formatting pattern. I'm going to change that to small d. Remember, small d will give us the number 0 to 6 for a day of the week. So I need to know what day of the week the first day of the month happens to be on. Say OK to that. All right, let's see if this is working. I'm going to turn on the debug for this, this, and this. And let's just put these down here. I'm going to put start day down, or I'm going to put month and year. Start day I'm going to put down here. Month and year I'm going to put up at the top. Okay, let's preview this. And we should see our starting month is 2, our year is 2024, and our start day is 4, which will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, Thursday. And if we were to refer to a real calendar, so let's look for an online calendar. Here, time and date. And if I take a look at 2024, I can see here's February. The 1st of February starts on a Thursday, which is exactly what we want. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Okay, so that's working. Next thing I want is I want to determine the number of the days in a month. And remember, I know the number of days for all of the months except February. They never change. So I'm going to make a list of the number of days in each month. I'm going to be simulating something in programming that's called an array. So let's make a variable over here, and I'm going to call this days per month. Important that this is a text variable. Now I'm going to do something here, and if you're not familiar with what I'm about to do here, hold tight because I will explain it. But I'm going to make this into a variable that looks like this. I'm going to start off with a square bracket, and January has 31 days. February has 28. Now I know sometimes it has 29. We're going to deal with that in a second. March has 31. April has 30. May has 31. June has 30. July has 31. August has 31. September has 30. October has 31. November has 30. And December has 31. We want to make sure that we've got 12 in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so there we go. So what is this? What I've done here is I've created what's called an array. An array is just a fancy computer word for list. And I have a list of the number of days for each month in the order of the months. So for the first month, I've got 31, that's January. For the second month, I got 28 for February. Again, we're going to be dealing with February as a special case. March, I have 31. April, I have 30, etc. We are going to use this as a way to look up the number of days in any month that is not February. So then why have I included February in this list? The one-to-one mapping of the number of days to the actual month number is not a coincidence. There's a reason why I want this, the 31 here for January 1st, followed by February, followed by March, followed by April, because we're going to be using what's called the index to access the particular number. So this first 31, that's the first index, and January is the first month. October is the 10th index. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's that 31 right there. It's going to give us that, right? Now, I've included February in here because if I don't have it in there, it's going to throw all of my indices off. So if I wanted March, for example, I want March is the third month. I'm with the third index, 1, 2, 3. If February wasn't there and I just had 31 and 31, 1, 2, 3 would take us to 30. So February just needs to be in there so that way it doesn't put all of my indices off by 1. So I'm going to make a decision here first. If the month is not February, then I'm just going to look up the number from this list. Let's add a condition right under here. Condition. If month is not equal to 2. 2 is the number for February. January is 1, February is 2, March is 3, etc. So if the month is not 2, then I am going to assign to a variable. Now I don't have one yet. I'm going to call this days in month. Days in month. Assign days in month, and I'm going to use a formula here. I'm going to use the parse.json function for this. Parse.json allows you to manipulate data that is formatted as JSON. And one of the things that is allowed in JSON are arrays. And that's why I've made this to look like an array. So anytime you see these square brackets, this means array. And then the items in the array are separated by commas. And I can use the parse.json formula to say, give me the item at index number whatever. So here's how we're going to do that. Days a month, I can use the formula here, parse.json. And I need the source of whatever I am looking up, and that is my days per month variable. Days per month. And then I want the index. Now you might just think I can use month, right, as is. Now here's a very interesting thing about the way that arrays work. Arrays start counting from 0, not from 1. So here, let's just say okay to this for now. And let's take a look at our days per month variable here. And if I wanted the first month, that's January, I want this number right here. This is not index 1 as far as arrays are concerned, it's index 0. The second one is index 1, the third one is index 2, etc. So it's always our month number minus 1. It's just an interesting quirk about how the way computers work. They often start counting from 0. So we just need to translate our month number into an array index, and that's always going to be month minus 1. So let's go back here, assign days per month, month minus 1. Say OK to that. All right, and if I turn this debug on, and let's put this down here. Now, if I preview this, this is obviously going to give me nothing because I'm currently doing this in February, so this condition is not met. I'm actually in February, so this is not going to do anything. But what we can do is temporarily, let's take these guys and turn them off, and I'm going to temporarily assign a month and year number. So let's just keep the year at 2024 for now. And I'm going to give the month, let's give it, I don't know, like the 5th month, May. That's going to be May, and this should give us 31 for our number of days. So let's preview this. Number of days, 31, great. And let's change this to April. This should say 30. 30, very good. So this is working. This is now looking up from our list the actual number of days for any month other than February. So that's working. I'm going to leave this as is for now because later when we build out the rest of this month generation, I'm going to want to be able to test it with a bunch of months. So leave this turned off for now. We'll turn it back on when we're confident everything is working. Now I need to deal with February. This is where our Figma design is going to help us. So if we zoom out over here, these are our rules for whether a month is a leap year. A leap year is not a leap year if it is not divisible by 4. So that's the easy one, right? We make a number, try to divide it by 4, doesn't divide evenly, then it's not a leap year, 28 days in February. A year is a leap year if it is divisible by 4, except, and there's these conditions up in here, but we're going to start by, well, let's divide it by 4. Does it divide evenly? Well, then it could be a leap year. If the year is also a century, so it ends in 2 zeros, so the year 500, 1900, 2000, it is only a leap year if it is also divisible by 400, meaning that the year 2000 is a leap year, the year 2100 is not. So we need to account for all of these things, and this flowchart is going to really help us create all of our conditions. Let's start with the first one. If the year is not divisible by 4, then it's a common year, and February is going to have 28 days. Let's go back over to your ProtoPie, and I'm going to add another condition here. Condition. If the month is February, so month equals 2, and the year is divisible by 4. Well, how do we figure out evenly divisible? I'm going to introduce something here called modulus. Now, you might have seen these in some of my other tutorials. If you have seen a tutorial for how I do a count up timer for a video player, right? So how you get minutes and seconds. I use modulus for this. Modulus is similar to division, but instead of giving us an answer, so instead of saying 10 divided by 3, right? 10 divided by 3, 3 goes into 10 3 times with 1 left over, 1 remainder. Modulus gives us the remainder and discards the 3. So instead of 10 divided by 3, if I did 10 modulus 3, it's going to give me 1. 3 goes into 10 3 times with 1 left over. The remainder is all that modulus gives me. If I had 9 modulus 3, 3 goes into 9 3 times with 0 remainder. So 9 modulus 3 is going to give us 0. Whatever the remainder of division is, that's what modulus gives you. And whenever modulus gives us 0, that means the number divides evenly. So in this case, I want to say if the year modulus 4 does not equal 0, that means there's remainder, it doesn't divide evenly, this is not a leap year, and therefore there are 28 days in February. Notice how I don't have a modulus operator here. I've got greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, equals or not equal to. If we go to right here, if I go to year, and I change this to formula, I can use modulus in this formula. So I'm going to say year modulus, and modulus is represented by the percent character. Year modulus 4. So like I say, similar to division, if I were to do division, I could do this, right? Year divided by 4, but that's going to give me possibly a decimal number. But again, I don't care about the exact division. I just care about remainder. So if year modulus 4 does not equal 0, 0 is the value you get when the number divides evenly. If it doesn't equal 0, doesn't divide evenly, February will have 28 days. So I'm going to say Feb and year not evenly divisible. And then I'm going to use one of these again. And here, let's move this down here. And this is going to become evident soon. I'm going to use another one of these. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to say not a leap year. Feb has 28 days. And let's copy this assign. But instead of using this formula, I'm just going to explicitly use 28. And I'm going to say equals 28. All right, so this is our first condition. Now we need to go to our second one. Is it divisible by 4? Well, yes. Is it also divisible by 100? Is it a century? If it's divisible by 4 and it's not a century, then it's a leap year. Any year that is divisible by 4 that is not a 1900, a 2000, a 2100, that is a leap year. So let's duplicate this because it's going to be very similar. Duplicate this condition. And I'm going to say if the year modulus 4 equals 0, so it is evenly divisible by 4, and I'm going to say the year, and I'm going to say formula, and I want is the year divisible by 100? Year modulus 100. So if the year is divisible by 4, but not divisible by 100, then it's a leap year. So this would be like a 2004, for example, right? Divisible by 4, but not by 100. So that is a leap year. Let's change this. Evenly divisible by 4, but not 100. Then I'm going to say is a leap year. February has 29 days. Assigned days per month, we're going to say 29. Okay, let's move on to our next one. If it is divisible by 100 and also divisible by 400, then it is a leap year. If not, then it's not a leap year. So we're going to handle this no branch first. So if it is divisible by 4 and is divisible by 100, but not divisible by 400, not a leap year. So once again, let's duplicate this. And I'm going to say, is the year divisible by 4? Yes. Is the year divisible by 100? I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to add another one in here, formula. Is the year modulus 400 not equal to 0? So is divisible by 4, is divisible by 100, but not divisible by 400. Then it's not a leap year. So we're going to say, and century not divisible by 400. Then this is not a leap year. February has 28 days. Now, before I move on, there's nothing wrong with this condition. It will work. It will work just fine. But really, it can be simplified a little bit more. If a number is divisible by 100, it is also divisible by 4. Because 100 is divisible by 4. I don't need this second part. I can simplify this a little bit by just removing that. So if the year is a century, we can already intuit that is divisible by 4. Right? And then lastly, this is now if it is a century and it is divisible by 400, then it is a leap year. So let's duplicate this one more time. And we're going to say if the year modulus 400 equals 0, evenly divisible by 400, then it is a leap year. And we're going to say is divisible by 400. And we're going to say is a leap year. February has 29 days. And we'll change this to 29 and this to 29. Let's change this one so that way it is a little bit less verbose. I'm going to say year, not century, divisible by 4. There we go. Let's preview this. Now, in mine, I should see 29 because February 2024 is a leap year. So let's preview this. And I see days a month is 30. So what did I mess up here? Right, okay, so it's giving us 30 days. And remember what we did here. Remember how we set a value for month and year explicitly. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to turn these back on. This will now save the current month and year to these variables. So if I preview this, and I should see days and month, 29. There we go. That's great. Let's test some other scenarios. So I'm going to turn this back off again. And if I have the year is now 2023, that's not a leap year. So I should see 28 days for February. And my value for month, I want to set to 2. Right? Number of days, 28. Great. Let's now test some centuries. So let's use the year 2000. 2000 is divisible by 4 and is a century and is divisible by 400. Therefore, this should give me 29 days. There we go. I see 29 days. The year 2100 is divisible by 4, is divisible by 100, but not divisible by 400. This should not be a leap year. And I have 28 days. So there we go. Now I am confident that my number of days detection is working.